Bill, can you walk us through your process of trying to get to know the players you're going to be working with this spring? Because I'm sure you had to look at some video, and there wasn't a lot of game video on some of those guys. Can you just walk us through what that's been like? Try to get a handle on things.
Two things. One is right outside of their football playing because limited film.
Yeah.
Of course, I had watched their whole season before I came here. I kind of anticipated this happening, and we were in a little bit of a lull period recruiting at the Air Force. And I try to watch like one game a day, and 10, 15 days later you get through the whole season. So I'd seen, but you're obviously seeing 5 and 57 the most.
Yeah.
But the first thing when I came here is I did have them fill out like information sheets about their families and personal stuff.
Okay.
So I at least knew the kids and where they were from and who their parents were and all that kind of stuff. And then we did have a couple weeks before we started practice out here, part of the winter program, outside of the lifting. And we're allowed to have some, couldn't use a football or any of that stuff, but we were allowed to do some just movement kind of agility stuff out here. And so that gives you a feel. And I remember my impression, and even mentioning or answering this for some other people, is like my take on the group overall is like they have good athleticism. I didn't look at any of those guys and think, wow, that guy's a little stiff or he's a little slow. Super good looking movement guys. And what we basically did the first couple weeks out here before we started spring ball, we would be doing like defensive back movement drills. But it's a good indicator of how well a kid can move. And they do some of that in pass coverage, But that was my take on them as a good athletic group. Right, there's not a ton of experience. Everybody knows that. But, as much as anything, I want to just kind of get to know them personally and what their role's been here and where they're from and what their family's about and all that kind of stuff.
What have been your initial impressions of them just as a off the field, as maybe just in personality, the personality and characteristics of the group that way?
Yeah, good, very good. I've told them this too. Good guys, I know that sounds very general, but very good guys. Very interesting in being good football players. Very coachable, ambitious, hardworking guys. There's not one component of any of those things that I could gripe about in the time I've been here. These guys they're football guys. They're going to school here and they're going to get a great education, but they came here to play football and it's important to them, and they train and practice ambitiously, and they're good guys. Yeah.
Spencer Lytle, does he look natural to you, an inside linebacker in that move? I know you haven't been around him in the past, but has that been a pretty seamless transition, or are there some areas where he needs to grow before he's ready for the season to play?
That's a good question. They're all developing right now, but honestly, he's been a pleasant surprise. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really know what to expect from any of them, because like you said, he hadn't been on much game film. But in the practices we've had so far, Spencer's looked like he's played linebacker, inside backer all along. Like, I think he'll do a good job, and he's super functional, instinctive, athletic. Yeah, nothing like, he looks like he's out of sorts. Not at all. He's done a nice job, and I think he's going to be a good player. Yeah.
I know you're still trying to figure out your combinations, but we've had a chance to watch a couple practices, and Muma and Tatum have been together in a tandem. What do you like about each of those guys and what they could potentially provide to your group?
Yep. I'm going to answer what I thought you were going to allude to first, and I'm going to tell you about what you asked me. Like, the way we had the depth chart set up now, it's strictly based on snaps played last year. That's all it is. I got the stats from guys, and these guys played this many defensive snaps, and it's not a ton of them, but this guy played 60, this guy played 50, this guy played 25. And I looked at some special teams snaps as well, not as relevant, but if a kid, Jake Chaney, he's played 200 some snaps of special teams last year. That's something. Obviously the staff here felt he was worthy of playing on all the special teams and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how we've started out. And then reiterate the second part about the guys you're asking.
And Tatum, the two that are, I suppose, have the most snaps at the
Yeah,
position.
yeah.
What do you like about each of those guys?
For Tatum Grass, he's done a fantastic job in the weight room, which honestly, everything we do, I evaluate and I either give credit for the kid or it's a concern for the kid. But like, he's a spectacular weight room guy. So that's my first impression when I get in here, right? We're in winter workouts and they're lifting and testing out on bench and squat and all that. Super conscientious, super diligent. Again, that's why this guy came here, right? To play football here. And I think he's done a good job. And again, he played, 50, 60 snaps last year on defense. And Muma, same thing, about the same. I think he might have played a little bit less, maybe 50, 55 plays on defense. But Muma is athletic. He's instinctive. None of them are today are future first-round draft picks, but I haven't been disappointed in any of them. All the way down to, Brian Sanborn and Aidan Vaughn. They're all functional. These guys look like they've played linebacker before. They have instincts. From now to their last bowl game here, there'll always be stuff to coach and correct daily on the practice film, but those first two guys you talk about, they've done a good job. I wouldn't sit here to saying like, oh yeah, those are the two starters in the opener next fall. They might be, you know what I mean? But nobody's been disappointing, like either whether it's Spence or any of those guys. They're all doing a good job.
To kind of follow up on that, Paul has always said that he likes to use the spring to just identify who's going to be in the mix on the depth and playing time in camp and in the season. When you get done with spring, do you have an idea of how many guys you'd like to know in your mind? I can trust these guys in camp and in the season next year. Is it 4? Is it 5 at those two spots?
That's a good question. There's no doubt when you come out of spring, you're going to have a pecking order. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a depth chart, right? We have preseason. We get about 28 practices in preseason. Obviously the last 10 of those you're totally honing in on the opener, but you got at least 2 full weeks. It's not a full spring practice, but a full 2 weeks in preseason to continue to evaluate, and make it competitive. But yeah, there's no doubt. At the end of spring ball, we'll be saying, here's the starters, here's the 2s, here's the 3s, here's the 1, here's the number 2, here's the number 3, here's the number 4. I think in the fall, by the time you get in the game, in my mind, for a 2 inside linebacker position, you got to say these are the 5 guys. Because inevitably somebody could get nicked, and I don't know this exactly what the travel roster procedure's been here, but I would think you would travel with 5 guys. And so, we'll come out of spring ball and say this is the 1, this is the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it'll still be competitive in the fall. You get 10 days out of the opener. No. Yeah. You're oiling up the guys for the reps. And the nice thing too is, and Jim and Paul have been great about it in spring, as we distribute the reps, like Aidan Vaughn's getting the same number of reps as Tate Grass, and I want that. Right? We're not playing anybody right now. This is development and evaluation, right? Development for the players, evaluation for us. So I want Brian Sanborn to get the same number of reps as Muma.
How much? So obviously you've seen a ton of different defenses and just ways to go about it. What's been your process, kind of learning how Jim Leonard's doing things here and kind of what you need to do to help out the defense as a whole? Yeah,
that's a good question. One is, I will say this, and I'm old as dirt and coached in a bunch of different places. It's moderately unique. It is not. This isn't what the other 115 Division I schools are doing defensively. In the short time I've been here, and I've only known Jim professionally. I knew Bobby. I worked with Bo at the Tampa Bucks, but Jim is outstanding. His football acumen is elite. He reminds me when I worked for Nick Saban, just for where he's at in his career and at his age. Now, he played in the NFL for good coaches, but his understanding of schematic football and defensive concepts to negate those, and they're at the tip of his tongue, he's outstanding. What I have tried to do in the short time I've been here, and this is because I'm going through this process too. We have some volume on defense. We don't run one or two things.
Right.
And it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing because it's a nightmare for the offenses to prep for. It's a curse because you got to learn it and drill it. And for the young guys walking in the door, it can be moderately overwhelming from a volume standpoint. And so my main task in the time I've been here is to try to goof the players into thinking it's not that complicated. And to streamline things and make as many things as I can same as. Yeah, it's called something else, and this is what makes it different, but for you, it's the same thing as these two other defenses. You know what I mean? That's the main thing I've tried to do. And I would have, and I do that everywhere I've ever gone. I think that's the job of the position coach, is to streamline the teaching. And even though we play in a super sophisticated game, right? We're the only sport that's got 22 guys on the field at one time. It's complex. But your job is to take the component of your position and coach the player into the simplicity of it, so that they're just playing football. They're not thinking a million things in their head before the ball's even snapped, And it's easier said than done, but that's what I try to do in the time I've been here. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much different is, in terms of the numbers of different things y'all are doing here than maybe you had done in previous stuff? You talked about how it was unique. I didn't know if it was just because of Leonard's expertise or just that volume you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think it's as much volume as, when I say it's super unique, let me just say this. I haven't been around certain components of it at other places. And when I got here and I found out what they're doing, I was like, it's a good idea. And I had never done it. And just not super duper fancy blitz patterns and all that. I'm talking about just structurally how they put together the front seven. I think it's very clever, and honestly, I can't say I've been around it. So, like I say, nothing super radical or, we run all these exotic blitzes, which we have all that stuff. But I think in just even structurally how the defense is put together, and it's very unfriendly for the offense, and it's excellent. And yes, there's a little bit of mental stuff for the players. They got to digest, and we only do certain things on certain formations and all that, and that creates volume of learning and checking and thinking, but it's super unfriendly for the offense, and it's excellent.
With Aidan, you initially landed him at Air Force.
Yeah.
Was there any type of moment you had when he came back, or giving him grief at all about
No,
his coach?
not at all. He came out to our camp in the summer, and he committed when he was out there. And then, people, which in this day and age it's not as common, but Wisconsin has always done a great job of, they're willing to look at senior film on kids, right? The majority of each class commits nowadays in August before they ever play one snap of senior high school football. And so, obviously, Aidan was tearing it up his senior year, and he got a bunch of Big Ten offers. And he was totally straightforward, and we were with him too, and he let me know early on. He said, Coach, I am looking at some other Big Ten schools that have started to offer me, and then eventually, he decided he wanted to go to Wisconsin, and so it was very short dialogue. But they're great people, him and his folks, and that happens all the time. You know what I mean? We were a group of 5. This is a Power 5 school, and if I was him, I'd make the same choice.
Bill, Paul told us that Bobby and Bob both had come to him independently and brought your name up as a possible spot filler here. You said you worked with Bob, right, in Tampa? How did you know Bobby? Or where did you come from?
Just professionally.
Okay.
His dad was in the league, and it's kind of funny. I know I've told this story before. I would see Bobby April at the convention.
Also on Ingram. Was he talking?
No,
Bobby
but it was Bobby April.
Okay.
Yeah, that's who I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I met Bobby Ingram once we got
Bob's
here.
on the staff.
Yeah. But I told a story before. I'd see Bobby April at the convention regularly, and we would always talk about the scenario where Bo would move back to offensive line, because Bo was our offensive line coach in Tampa, and as you know, he's a career O-line coach. He was in between positions, and he took the inside backer job here and did a great job. He's got 2 guys going to get drafted here in a minute. But anyways, we always kidded about, like, at some point, Bo's going to get back on the offensive line. And when that scenario presented itself, Bobby April and I started texting, like, here it goes, And so, we kind of fell into place that way. But yeah, Bo and I had worked together. But Bobby I just knew him, I knew his dad, and we'd always kid about this scenario when I'd see him at the convention, and he's always like, yeah, that happens, I'm gonna try to get you on board, So.
What are the biggest ways your NFL background helps you now as a college coach? And aside from obviously the recruiting stuff, what's the biggest adjustment when you go back from the NFL to college as a coach?
Well, like you said, one is the whole recruiting world, right? That's just it's a part of the job. It's another competitive part of the job. One you have to take great pride and diligence in, because if you don't have good players, you're not going to win. The coaching standpoint, it's more similar than it is different. The biggest difference in between college and the NFL is in the NFL you have the players all day because they don't go to school. So you have them from 8 to 4. Here, we can't have our guys for more than 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week. So you do have more time to prep. You have your players in a more reduced time schedule, and it's critical, right? You only get them for 4 hours a day. In the NFL, you got them for 8 hours a day. But really, what you do in meetings, what you do on the field and all that, it's the same. It's the exact same. The players are a little bit older. Some of them are married with kids. You're with them for, 6-7 months a year, 6 days a week. There's a little bit of a pace to the NFL, where maybe in college there's a little more sense of urgency, a shorter schedule, 12 games instead of 17 now, But overall, it's more similar than it is different.
You kind of alluded to it, but you've worked with quite the list of head coaches in your career. Can you pick one guy who's maybe had the biggest influence on you?
From a head coach, having the opportunity to work for Nick Saban, opportunity of a lifetime. I actually thought I knew football when I went there, and I realized how much I didn't know. And I grew like a monster when I was there. I still try to emulate so many of the things he did, schematically, technically, personnel-wise. I'll tell you, the other guy who had a gigantic impact on me was a guy named Gary Moeller. He was our defensive coordinator at Michigan. And when I've told the people this before, when I left there, I GA'd there for 2 years, 85 and 86. Jim Harbaugh was our quarterback. And when I left there, I thought if I, in my wildest imagination, could be one half the coach that Gary Moeller is, I'd be the second best coach in the country. That guy was everything I would ever think. This is the epitome of what a ball coach is. And he had a huge impact on me. And again, I was super young in my career. I coached high school for 4 years, and I got on as a grad assistant at Michigan. But so many good guys. But of course, to be around Nick, even back when Nick was at Michigan State, he was in another galaxy of excellence. Nick would be good at anything. He could be in any field of business. He would be phenomenal. He's just a very smart person and very good problem-solving skills, and he was excellent. But those are probably two guys that just pop into my head.
Good time for another one?
Hey, Will, with Jordan Turner, he had some limited snaps last year, but he made the most of them with a couple of interceptions, the TFL 108 Las Vegas Bowl. I know it's still early, 5 practices in, but what steps have you seen him take in his game this spring, or maybe even in winter condition, what you've seen from him, heading into his 3rd year in the program?
Yeah. 2 things. One is he really has a good grasp of the defense. Like we'll be in our meetings, and heck, I'll be asking him, like, what are you guys doing on this, or what's the call there? He knows it. One thing he's done, he's committed to learning the playbook, which is, I tell our guys, that's the first order of business, right? Don't worry about how to do it. First thing you got to do is know what to do. And the second thing is, he's super instinctive and has like an attacking mode which is a starting point for everything you're looking for in a linebacker play. You know, you got to be able to key and diagnose, but at some point you have to trigger an attack, and he does that in an excellent fashion. You know what I mean? Those are probably the two things I think he's jumped off the screen on.